Hey guys, James here. I hope you enjoyed the build video for this RC Gadgetz 56-inch MXS. This thing is beautiful. It is super easy to build. So there's going to be some flight footage of this soon, but I hope you enjoy the build video for now. So the first step is to take everything out of the box and unwrap everything. The scheme on this thing is absolutely beautiful. I fell in love with it as soon as I saw it in the pictures. I said I need the blue, so the blue is what we're doing for the build. So everything came really well packaged, and this build video is going to be more of an assembly video, kind of more casual, as there's not many steps. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you pick up this airplane because this thing is sweet, and I'll have some flight footage as soon as the weather is not super cold. So here I am just taking a look at the fuselage. Everything's pre-done, the lights are pre-ran, the motor's mounted, there's nothing you need to do, just like the Slick. So this thing is sweet. This is perfect for anyone wanting to get into 3D without doing any building. This is the way to go. There's nothing better. There are no hybrid airplanes that look this good. So for the first step is to do the landing gear. So it's just the two bolts on the bottom, they're already in the airplane, so you take them out and then you slide the landing gear up under the foam piece, which is super simple. There's no struggle or anything. The foam piece isn't going to break. You don't have to bend it back super far. Just bend it up enough to slide the landing gear under there. The landing gear is pre-done. The wheels are put on. The wheel pants are put on. There's nothing you need to do. So once you get the landing gear slid up under the piece of foam, I just used a little bit of Loctite on both bolts, and just to make sure a little extra comfort. And then that's it for the landing gear. This is really easy. They did a really good job making this, taking out all those steps that can maybe frustrate some people. Wheel pants can sometimes be a pain. So this is the first major step in this build. So now that the landing gear is on, it's time to move to the back of the airplane. So you're going to want to remove the two bolts that are already in there, which will hold the elevator in, and also remove the foam piece, which is already pre-cut, so you don't need to do any cutting. And you'll want to glue that back later, but for now I just take it off the airplane, and make sure you don't throw that out. So that'll be glued back later. I don't show that in the video, but it's very simple. Just use some CA or foam tack glue, whatever works best for you. So for the elevator, make sure you plug in the light wires. So the lights are already pre-ran, so just make sure that's plugged in, and then you want to install the elevator, and those wires will go up into the fuselage. So it's kind of tricky. I use some tweezers to kind of help guide the wires, and you'll see once I get the wires guided in the correct place, the elevator will slide right into position. So I'm just adjusting the wires, the elevator slides forward, and you're good to go. It will still take a little bit of adjustment. I found putting the nose of the airplane actually on the ground and pushing down with a small amount of force will help get the two bolts seated, because it is a tight fit, but it needs to be. This is a really good connection. It's square. There's no adjustments that will need to be made, so you'll see that it takes a little bit of adjustment. Once you get it set up right and everything seated properly, you'll be good to go. So next up is the rudder. So the hinges are already glued into the rudder side, so you just need to glue them into the fuselage side. The slots are all pre-cut. So the only thing you really need to do here is make sure the scheme lines up and that there's a good rudder gap, so you have good deflection in both directions, and that's about it. This is super simple. Just use some CA glue. I kind of flex the joint, or actually move the control surface to kind of open up and make sure glue gets all the way down. Make sure you're using thin or medium. This is kind of in between, but this is super simple, and you want to make sure this dries and doesn't get knocked out of alignment, because that will not be good, and you don't want the scheme not lined up because it's too beautiful to not be perfect. So everything looks good on the tail, so we're going to move to the front of the airplane now. So for the cowling, I found that pre-drilling the holes makes putting on the cowling 10 times easier, so I actually use the included wood screws for the cowling to pre-drill the holes. and this is just 10 times easier. Definitely do this, or use a small hand drill or small drill bit, whatever way you can pre-drill them, do it. And then I hit them with a little bit of CA glue after I'm done. So you want to do this for all 4 tabs, and then this will make installing the cowling 10 times easier. So what I like to do at this point in the build is make sure the canopy is off, and you're going to have some time to let everything sit, but I hit the motor box with some CA glue on all the main joints. This is just a reassurance that the factory got everything. Very rarely do they miss anything, but you know, a little bit of CA glue soaking into these joints before you put the canopy on and the cowling on. You don't want to have to take any of those off and adjust anything, so just hit everything with some CA glue, not too much, and make sure you don't get any on any wires, but definitely a step that you need to do. So the next thing will be putting the cowling on, so make sure all that CA is dry, and the cowling holes are pre-drilled and they will line up perfectly with the pre-drilled holes on the tabs, so this should go very easy, especially since you already pre-drilled the tabs with a drill bit or the included screws. So I normally put one in just to hold the cowling on, and then I'll put the canopy on as well to make sure everything lines up there. But there should be no issues here. Everything is pre-done from the factory. So here's the other side, the last 2 bolts. Super simple, scheme still looks beautiful, everything lines up. So the last thing to do, or one of the last things to do, is to put the spinner on, and this is very simple. So you just want to put the prop on, make sure the bolt locations are where they need to be, and then put the prop adapter on. Very simple. Don't over tighten it, but you definitely want to make sure this is tight. So it's that kind of just right area. Vice grips are probably not the best tool to use, but that's all I had. The main thing with the spinner is don't over tighten the spinner bolts. That can damage the spinner, and just make sure that it is actually seated correctly, and this will go super well. And this thing looks great, and the spinner gap is perfectly aligned. There's no need to adjust. On other different airplanes, it can actually be a pain to get the spinner gap just right, but out of the box this is really well done. So the last thing to do is the linkages on the tail, the rudder, and the elevator. Everything's pre-centered, pre-done, so there's not too much adjustment to be made. You don't even have to center your servos up with your radio. I just went ahead and hooked everything up, and it's all good. The aileron linkages are already done. You don't even need to touch the wings beside the SFGs. So the wings are good to go pretty much right out of the box, and the SFGs are really straightforward. So this is pretty much the last step before you are ready to fly. So before you fly, you need to get all your radio equipment in. So I'm running the Jetty receiver like I do in all my stuff, or at least all my 3D stuff. And this is going to be different for everyone, so there's not one way to do it. The main thing about wiring is just make sure everything has a specific place. It has tie down, so it's not, rubbing on any wood. I'll post some pictures in the thread on RC groups of my exact wiring layout, and then also make sure your antennas have a good spot to go. But this is pretty much the whole build, and hopefully I'll have some flying footage of this coming up soon. So that's it for the build. This last little clip kind of shows a little bit more of the wiring, but as far as the throws for this airplane, on the tail I pretty much use as much as I can get, and on the ailerons you need about 39-40 degrees, and you'll be ready for a maiden flight and to tune it to your needs. This thing is very graceful. It's going to be great for people learning 3D, and is by far probably one of my favorite looking airplanes I've had in a really long time. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time, hopefully with some flight footage.